Hello, I'm John Hagelin, quantum physicist, president of Maharishi University of Management, and director of the Transcendental Meditation Program for the United States. A very, very sincere welcome to all of you who are gathering from all over the world for the second global group meditation of this year. The first was in January, an incredible success. We had 56,000 people all connected, all meditating at once from 90 countries, including countries from all over the world. Latin America was one of the very strong participants in that, under the inspiration of all the national leaders there, and Roger Luis, of course. There were 38,000 meditators and siddhas joining from Latin America for the total, again, which was 56,000, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5 times 7. And that's important. The significance of these global group meditations is profound. Research has shown, and many, many very, very rigorously performed experiments published in top journals from all over the world, at least 54 such studies, have shown a profound society-wide influence when enough people meditate as a group, and the power of the group seems to grow roughly as the square of the number of participants. And 56,000 squared, excuse me, is a very large number. So this is very exciting. We're going to continue this. We'll have at least 3 more already scheduled for later on this year, and that number will probably grow. Actually broadcasting this message today from the campus of Maharishi University of Management in Fairfield, Iowa, USA, where we had last time 600 participating in a group meditating here, and hopefully at least that number now. So that's also quite exciting. I hope those of you who have never visited here at the campus of Maharishi University of Management in the United States, please do so if you possibly can, and make it your second home. And even better yet, come to school here for a month or for a year. Send your children here because it's an amazing place. I came here for a brief stay, 30-something years ago, almost 40, and I'm still here 40 years later. I've been just glued to this place like a magnet. It is so attractive to be in a community, large community, of mostly siddhas, practicing their meditation as in a group twice a day in golden meditation domes is very, very special. And the influence on the United States has been profound over these years, and at the moment I would say continues to be very much needed. So how do we influence one another? Of course, when we're with somebody, we feel their influence. Whether we're at the dining room table with our family, we feel their influence. Whether they're happy, whether they're distressed, we feel their pain, so to speak, and their joy. There's so many ways we communicate with each other. So many ways we communicate our feelings through physical contact, through the spoken word, through our facial expressions, through the sounds, through our speech. So, in fact, those communications are relatively short range. You can only touch someone as far as you can reach. You can shout at them from across the room. But in these group meditations, our influence is obviously much larger. We're creating a global effect, uniting people from across continents, creating an influence that can be felt all over the world. There's something going on here that's a little deeper and a little subtler than reaching out and touching someone, or even shouting at them, which is difficult to do from Fairfield, to shout to the Middle East and be heard and have much of an effect. The amazing thing that quantum mechanics has brought to our attention, the physics of the 20th century and now the 21st century, is that there are all the observable ways we connect to each other, but there are invisible ways that we connect as well. Whenever we have contact or interaction with somebody, whether it's physical contact, verbal contact, telephone contact, cell phone contact, radio, television, the media, the written word, that creates an influence, of course, that we can feel. We're reading something uplifting, we're hearing a letter, we're feeling love coming from someone, we're feeling something less than love coming from someone. We feel that and we carry it with us for a while. And eventually, over the course of the next day and the next day, some of those influences are forgotten. They do wear off with time. But it's interesting that those experiences last. And it doesn't matter whether you've just interacted with your child or with your parent or with a friend, and that friend jumps on a plane and gets off in London. You still feel that conversation. You have a connection with people that really doesn't depend on distance. And it's that connection we have with people that doesn't really depend on distance that quantum mechanics has come along to explain to us. Quantum mechanics is an interesting thing. It's a deeper level of understanding of how nature works. At the surface level of billiard balls and planets, classical physics does a pretty good job of explaining how things work. But at the molecular level, at the atomic level, at the nuclear level, at all these deeper levels, a whole new science is required, a whole new logic, a whole new language. New mathematics is also required to properly understand physics at the atomic level and deeper levels. So there's different laws of nature at work. And in these quantum mechanical laws of nature, what is interesting is, it's very interesting. In fact, Einstein was so spooked by this, which is now a proven reality, that he abandoned quantum mechanics. He was one of the inventors of it, and he rejected it eventually, unfortunately, because it was a mistake, but he rejected it because he found it so unthinkable that quantum mechanics tells us that things do continue to influence each other at a distance, even at a huge distance. Objects that have been in contact, humans that have been in dialogue and have been influencing each other. In fact, any two things that have interacted, whether humans or inanimate objects, they continue to be connected forever. There's a connection that gets established, a link that gets forged, so that if you take, for example, two particles that have interacted and then you send one behind the moon, if an observation of one particle creates a change in that particle, and observation does change the object under observation, that's also part of quantum mechanics. The observer has an effect upon the observed. When that particle is affected through the act of observation, the particle behind the moon that had interacted with this particle in the past is also instantaneously affected. And this was very spooky to Einstein, because he didn't feel there should be any mysterious, spooky action at a distance, he called it, especially if that action at a distance might be faster than the speed of light. That is something Einstein could not abide, because he had already established the speed of light as the ultimate speed, the ultimate velocity. Since quantum mechanics, at least back then, suggested that these spooky quantum mechanical influences between any two objects or any two people who've interacted in the past, that those influences could then continue at speeds faster than the speed of light, Einstein didn't like that. It turns out that quantum mechanics done properly, quantum mechanics of the 20th and 21st century, which is now called quantum field theory, does get that right. And it does show that these quantum mechanical influences do travel at less than or equal to the speed of light. But apart from that little technical advancement that we understand how quantum effects are also constrained by the speed of light, it is still quantum mechanics that's telling us that these influences exist. So what is amazing is that when an American culture and Canadian culture, which are similar but different, are in continuous interaction, we communicate with our friends, we watch some of the same TV shows, we agonize over the same president, we such and such, share news, share stories, share culture, share a language, which we mostly do in the US and Canada, then there are very tight cultural bonds. And therefore, the populations of these countries are in interaction with each other. They do communicate with each other in a variety of ways. And that link, once established, is permanent. And of course, the US and Europe, Western Europe and Eastern Europe, every continent is in contact today. We are, to a degree that has never been seen before, one global family with intricate links, links of language, links of culture, links of history, links of communication, links of the internet and Twitter and so on. We are so interconnected today that we are really all one family. And yes, we feel closest to our actual biological family. Sometimes we feel closest to our neighbors who live in our same culture, speak the same language, but we feel close and connected to everyone. We're aware of what's happening all over the globe. So given that that is the case, that we have all interacted and we are all interacting, that means we are all connected. And that means that we do influence one another. And according to quantum mechanics, it doesn't matter how far apart we are. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference whether particle number 2, having interacted with particle number 1, is now sitting in the Crab Nebula somewhere. No difference whatsoever. The link between those particles and the degree to which they affect each other is not reduced. So, accepting quantum mechanics as the reality, we can easily see how the sort of influences we might expect to feel, somebody sitting next to us meditating, that there is a subtle connection, there's an influence one upon the other, that influence will also be seen if another person happens to be much farther away. So distance is ultimately no barrier, and that's what quantum mechanics tells us. So this is all by way of saying that we do affect each other. And there's enormous research by now that has been published in the best scientific journals, journals that probably wondered why they would be even reviewing an article that was submitted to them that suggests that a group meditation centered somewhere in the world could affect somewhere else, like the Middle East. But it does. And while those papers that have been submitted for publication by scientists and reviewed anonymously by other scientists have always been the subject of great skepticism, the research that has been done and published is at such a high standard that these journals inevitably accept these articles for publication because science is fact-based, or it's supposed to be. Let me say, science is mostly fact-based. There's a lot of bias that even goes into the world of science, which we try to remove, but people inevitably carry their biases with them. But mostly science is based on reality, on fact, and the facts of these studies are unambiguous. And the influence of groups of meditators in this case on society as a whole, even at a global scale, has been established beyond any scientific doubt. So organizing global meditations is a project, and it takes a lot of work and dedication by many, many people, every country with its teachers of transcendental meditation, its national leaders organizing, and now all of them organizing together. It's a great thing. And I think it's going to become more often and easier to organize, taking advantage of modern telecommunications and the internet. And it's a very, very good thing. And I'm just glad to be part of it today. I'm even happier that you are all part of it, because you are all the ones that are making this work and making it so powerful. As it was last time, as absolutely everybody reported in that huge meditation that took place on January 13th. Just remarkable reports have come from that. And it's an easy thing we can do, relatively speaking, to really produce a much needed influence of peace and global harmony, and hopefully more and more unity in the family of nations, and bridging some of the barriers that divide ourselves, even within nations. And that can happen, and it has happened observably and demonstrably whenever these groups are present. So let's find a way to keep doing this and keep expanding it, and also on a daily basis, or certainly weekly basis, checking in with our TM centers, with our teachers, taking advantage of group meditations at our TM centers, taking advantage of collective practice of the TM City program, which is available at quite a few of our centers, participating in these one-day retreats, which a lot of our centers are offering, days of knowledge and group meditations and week-long or weekend retreats. The more we involve ourselves in our meditation, the more we take advantage of advanced techniques of transcendental meditation, the TM City program, which is the ultimate advanced technique of transcendental meditation, the faster we grow in our progress towards greater health and dynamism, clarity, intelligence, and joy of life, especially joy of life, which truly ultimately motivates everyone. Greater joy, greater happiness. It's an inevitable result of more practice of the TM program and its advanced techniques. And as a side benefit, we can contribute to peace on earth. A pretty good deal all the way around. Apparently, I do have some questions that have been sent in for today, which I'll try to quickly address without taking too much of your time and letting you get on to your meditation. If you haven't yet, yes, get on to that. So let's see what we have.
Okay, is it possible that people meditating around the world in different places could prevent something negative from happening in a place where no one was meditating?
It's a very good question. I think you probably were able to hear that. I started to discuss that a little bit before. Because we are one global web, because we have all interacted through the media and through some way or other with each other in the past, we are all in this soup together. We are all contributing to the collective consciousness, the quality of collective consciousness, and the stress in collective consciousness. We're all contributing to it. We're feeling stressed. And we are all being influenced by the collective consciousness. It's a give and take. We help create it, but then we all live in it. So can we create an effect in some area of the world where there don't happen to be any meditators participating in this group meditation, or even some part of the world where there may not be any meditators, period? Like Antarctica, for example. There actually are some meditators in Antarctica, but not a lot. And the answer is yes. This influence we're talking about is global. There is no human being that has ever been completely divorced from society and is therefore not connected to it and influenced by it. Quantum mechanics tells us that. So we will have an effect everywhere. To make that a little bit more concrete and less abstract, what we really communicate when we're settling deeply in our meditation, especially with a group, is we're creating an influence, and we're sort of broadcasting, if you wish, an influence of calm, of harmony, of collected mind, which means coherent mind, a settled mind, a less stressed mind. Now there could, and people will feel that, whether they articulate it or not, it will influence their mood. Now one's mood, while a rather abstract thing, I guess you could say, is quite influential in our own lives. How we feel has a big effect on what we do, the decisions we make, whether our decisions are harmonious, life-nourishing, or whether we're just so distraught and so stressed that we're going to lash out at the next person we see. So it's the mood and level of stress and level of calm that determines how we behave. Somebody might have been planning a burglary or a robbery or some act of vengeance one day, planned for 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. So they get up and put on their special crime clothes, special outfit, which is, you see, they save for revenge. But what happens is that next morning they think, I don't really necessarily feel like doing this drastic act. I don't feel so driven to take somebody's life or to harm somebody, and also to subject my own self to the dangers and the repercussions and the criminal penalties that would come from such a dramatic and drastic act. I'm just not feeling that kind of crazy today. I'm not feeling gripped by tension and fear. I'm feeling a little bit clearer, a little more settled. And that's all it takes to prevent a crime. Crime is mostly an act of passion, kind of a drastic and desperate act. Nobody wants to face the punishment of crime. They do it in a moment of great haste and distress. You can reduce the distress, you can create more calm. If you can take off the blinders that can make our attention so narrowly cramped and so short-sighted that we could do something that's harmful to ourselves and to others. And now the attention to expand and relax and not be so narrowly cramped and short-sighted. That expansion of comprehension, that expansion of the boundaries of our vision is an automatic result of the mind settling. It's the opposite of the fight or flight response. So we can take away the stress and the mood that propels people to crime, even commit acts of terrorism. And it works. And it has worked again and again and again. And it's not always that we have meditators in the areas of conflict where terrorist acts are taking place. It's the air conditioning influence from the outside that comes when people surrounding that area, even across the globe, are experiencing greater peace and harmony. Sorry for a long answer to a short question, but it was a very good question.
Another question. Our small group in New Smyrna, Florida, really enjoyed your video at the Global Group Meditation in January. The one thing you said caused a stir. You said that the Maharshi effect proceeded at the speed of light, where we had been told that the effect was instantaneous. Can you please clarify this?
That's a really fun question to ask a physicist. You may regret that you asked it, but I'll try to keep it very, very short. This may sound odd. Does the effect, the influence of group meditation travel across the globe instantaneously, or does it travel only at the speed of light, which is fast, very fast? You can go around the Earth 7 times a second, so it's already pretty fast. But it's different, you might say, from instantaneous. So if that sounded shocking, that I had said that the influence only travels at the speed of light at most, this will be really shocking. The speed of light is instantaneous. And what does that possibly mean? It's fast, but is it instantaneous? The light from the sun takes 7 minutes to reach the Earth. Okay, fast, but not instantaneous. And the answer is no, it is instantaneous, and it does represent infinite speed. What does that mean? It means if you're a photon of light traveling from the sun to the Earth, you arrive instantaneously. You say, but wait a minute, I just watched you travel from the sun to the Earth and it took you 7 minutes. What do you mean that you're arriving instantaneously? Well, from the point of view of an object or a human being moving at the speed of light or close to the speed of light in a very fast rocket ship, it becomes instantaneous, literally. And the reason for that is, according to Einstein, who's the first person to clarify this, the distance from the sun to the Earth, if you're in a rocket ship heading to the Earth from the sun, and the speed of the rocket ship becomes very fast, close to the speed of light, it's not only that you're going faster so you're going to get there sooner. In addition to that effect, the actual distance of the Earth from the Earth to the sun shrinks to 0 as you approach the speed of light. So if you're in a rocket ship and you're moving at speeds that are close to the speed of light, you can get to the Earth instantly. You can get to the Andromeda galaxy, which is 2 million light years away, in a second, or even faster, if you can afford the rocket fuel to propel you to speeds that are that close to the speed of light. So there are different perspectives. That's why it's called relativity. The concept of time, the concept of space are part of the relative. They're not absolute. They are different for different observers. So what you call, a meter stick. Here's a meter stick. It's a meter long. And that's what I call a meter stick. But if somebody takes their meter stick, which is a meter long, and throws it past me, and the meter stick is moving at a high speed, a good fraction of the speed of light, when that meter stick flies by, I can take my 2 hands, which are only a foot apart, and I can hold that meter stick within my 2 hands for a moment before it crashes into the hand. I have to get out of the way soon. So time is relative. And if you were to assume that an object could travel faster than the speed of light. Maybe a particle of light could get from the sun to the earth, not in 7 minutes, but only 3 minutes. There will be other observers in the universe, those that might be moving relative to yourself, who will see that photon arrive not just instantaneously, but before it left. And you would have the ability to travel backwards in time as well. And it doesn't go very well for you. The universe becomes really hopelessly convoluted and illogical, like a cheap B-grade science fiction movie where they talk about time travel, and there are all sorts of logical problems typically with those movies. So anyway, the speed of light is instantaneous in the sense that I won't say it's instantaneous. That depends on who's looking. But it is infinite in that the particle of light can travel infinite distances in zero time. So that's why it becomes difficult to conceive of anything moving faster than the speed of light. As far as the Marshall effect is concerned, however, it doesn't really matter whether it's the speed of light or instantaneous, because it's plenty fast to communicate an influence of peace and harmony anywhere on Earth in less than a fraction of a second. I know you're sorry you asked.
People say that they felt great happiness during the global group meditation. Why is this more than meditating in a small group at their local TM centers?
It is often the case, very often the case, that people experience deeper silence and greater unboundedness when they're meditating in a larger group. On a logical level, just common sense level, you might expect there's going to be more wholeness, more unity, when more people are participating in that experience. There's greater wholeness, greater unity, automatically created simply by the numbers involved, greater coherence. So that's kind of a common sense answer, but it's in a sense, it's the correct answer, because we influence each other. We've established that. When we're all radiating a powerful influence of peace, we're really creating quite a bubble of peace. And we're all in that bubble, whether that bubble is in the same big building, like a bubble-shaped golden dome, or wherever you happen to be. So we're creating more and more of an environment which is charged with peace, just by virtue of our numbers. But there's another element to it, and again, I'm sure you'll be sorry you asked, but because consciousness is a quantum field, technically a Bose field, our consciousness, my consciousness, your consciousness, my consciousness, my individual consciousness is just a ripple on the ocean of consciousness. My individual consciousness is simply a localized wave on an unbounded ocean of universal consciousness. And according to physics, there is only one universal consciousness, only one unified field, and everything else, every particle, every human being, every human consciousness is a wave on that one ocean. Now, waves have funny behavior compared to particles. Particles behave like particles, and we have plenty of experience with marbles, and we roughly know how particles behave. But waves have a funny additional feature. Waves flock together. Waves prefer to move in synchrony. That's how laser light works. Laser light is made of many, many photons, many, many tiny waves that all line up with each other in perfect lockstep coherence. And that gives laser light its incredible focus, its incredible brightness, its incredible intensity. So waves of light, water waves, any waves, consciousness waves behave that way. They like to move together. That means two people together, if one transcends, there's an increased likelihood that the other will transcend. If three people are meditating together, there's an even greater likelihood that they will be found transcending together. When you take a golden dome filled of 100 people or 1,000 people, or collective meditation with 50 6,000 people as we had in January, the tendency to transcend, the inner draw towards the transcendent becomes more powerful. And that's called Bose coherence, sometimes called an Einstein Bose condensation. It's the tendency of individual consciousnesses to function coherently, as if in synchrony. And that tendency to move together as a flock grows with the size of the flock. So you're in a big flock of meditators, then sitting together, the tendency that one or several people transcending will drive the whole flock towards the transcendent. That's just an inevitable consequence of the fact that consciousness is a Bose field.
And finally, is there anything else we can do to create more peace and harmony in the world today?
What can we do to create more peace and harmony in the world today when the world so badly needs it? I think our number one responsibility as human beings on this planet is to not be part of the problem. We should all be part of the solution, which means we ourselves, individuals, should be behaving, hopefully spontaneously behaving, peacefully, in a way that is nourishing to oneself, of course, but to others and to the whole environment. That is a growing, inevitable consequence of higher states of consciousness, because in higher states of consciousness, that abstract unity within, the transcendent field of consciousness within, becomes more and more permanent in our lives, more dominant in our lives. So we're living peace. We're living this ocean of deep calm, deep contentment, the contentment of the transcendent, which we taste in our deepest points of meditation. That becomes our living, breathing, daily reality. And we're inevitably going to behave towards others as we would have them behave unto ourselves, because we start to live the unity of life when we perceive others as ourselves. So growing in our own meditation is probably our number one responsibility, meaning regularity of practice, advanced techniques of transcendental meditation, the TM City program, group practice of it, residential courses of inspiring knowledge of higher states of consciousness. Tapes by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi are incredible. And your local teachers of transcendental meditation all have a great depth of knowledge. So spend time on it and deepen your practice. And then whenever possible, be part of a meditating group or a group of TM City participants and do your TM City program or your TM together, or at least synchronized. Then you have the power of the group. And the power of that group grows as the square of the number of the group. So even if you have just 3 of you at the center, you're really creating a peaceful influence that roughly 10 people or 9 people would create on their own. So that synchronization is powerful, and it's relatively easy to do, and we do hope to continue this and expand it into greater and greater numbers and with greater frequency. And for this, again, I'd like to thank all of the organizers of this event, all of our countries that are participating, all of the national leaders and organizers of those countries, and especially all of you who are actually doing the heavy lifting, doing the transcending, so to speak. It's not heavy lifting, but just doing the key deed, and that is experiencing expanded awareness and deep peace from within, and radiating that peace throughout the environment and throughout our world in need of peace. Thank you very, very much for being with us today.